have with us Dr. Ashok Khemka, a man with a heart of iron and nerves of steel, whose willpower is an example to all of us.
Dr. Khemka is not only a senior IAS officer but also an inspiration to all of us.
A man of words, compassion, conscience, and values.
The gnoTalks 2016 team feels proud to have you here with us.
Thank you, Rishabh and Ritika. You have introduced me and given me some eulogies which I do not deserve. Anyway, it's wonderful to be at your institute, the Motilal Nehru National Institute of Technology, Allahabad. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you very much.
Now, sir, starting with the questions. Sir, you have been transferred 45 times in 23 years by the state government. What kept you motivated in all these hardships?
Well, these figures were true up to October 2012. After that, I have enjoyed relatively more stable postings in lesser assignments which do not have much of importance from the government perspective. So stability has come, but in a different perspective after the month of October 2012. Well, initially when I was transferred, because of annoying a senior or a political executive for not doing something which was expected of from me by them, it felt bad. You were given a new assignment, but then one took that in its stride, in one's own stride. Slowly, those kind of encomiums started coming in, those backhanded slides that look, तेरे को मौका दिया तू यहाँ भी नहीं चला. We gave you an opportunity, but you could not deliver here also. Now that delivery had a private perspective. So there were doubts in one's mind. You would also have doubts in your own sphere when you enter a job, that when you do not conform, people will give you labels and then doubts develop. But then at that stage you have to introspect that whether you were wrong or they are showing their weakness in transferring you, and you have to take your decision. Sometimes it affects your family and you start feeling unsure about yourself, and that is a critical phase when you must overcome that. After having done that, it was, when you got transferred, there was you bore it up with stoicism. There was a bit of a resigned feeling. But a new job was always a new job. I was a fresh man out there. The last transfer of October 2012 was a watershed moment. So at that time, the world came to know that I was transferred 45 times. Not in 23 years at that time, it was 20 years at that time, because the first 2 years are your training period, there are no transfers. So you had less than 20 years and you had 45 transfers. So the media suddenly lapped up from my executive record sheet that I was transferred 45. I didn't know the number of my transfers. And probably some smart man who was from the state knew the various political governments. They averaged out the tenures across the governments. And they found out very strangely that the average tenure was the same across all the 4 political governments. So it worked to my advantage in a sense that at least the neutrality tag was strengthened at that stage, that look, I worked irrespective of the color of the government. So that's how I would describe the various phases of the transfers it was painful. It created a doubt in your mind, but every job was a new job and I began as a freshman. And that's the spirit one must keep in one's life. Be a freshman, be a youth, be a child, always. Never age.
So, you have been working as a whistleblower and a bureaucrat for long. but your work came into limelight only when your name was associated with Mr. Robert Wadra. Do you think that the media wouldn't have reflected your hardships if it wasn't a high-profile case?
It's a good question, but let me first correct you one thing. I'm not a whistleblower. Now, who is a whistleblower? A whistleblower is somebody who steals, essentially, and his crime is forgiven because he does it for a larger purpose, for the larger goal of the humanity. I'll give you a classic case of the drug testing case of Ranbaxy. Now, in that case, the principal scientist had given a report to the board of directors that the clinical tests are fudged of those drugs which were going to the United States, and it was not proper for those drugs to be marketed to the United States because it's not backed by proper clinical tests. That scientific report was there within the organization. It was brought before the board. Now, without naming names, the chairman at that time was an ex-lieutenant governor of Delhi. It was brought before the management under the chairmanship of an ex-LG of Delhi, and they decided to bury it for the larger profits of the organization. A junior officer, a junior person to that chief scientist in the same organization, he literally stole those data and made it available to the US, telling that the organization is basically cheating you. Now, he was rewarded with millions of dollars for that whistleblowing act, right? So, for example, the famous case of the whistleblower is that case of Snowden. Now, what he did, he stole that data. Now, in my case, there was no stealing of data involved. Whatever I did was a part of my official duty, right? For example, in this particular case, a transaction had come up. It was basically a black marketing of a government license permission. For example, you have a driving license. Now, this driving license is a piece of paper telling the world that you are fit to drive the vehicle and not endanger other person's lives on the street. So, a third person, when it sees the license, it says, okay, he is authorized to drive, and that's it. Suppose a system is created, a rule system is created where you are able to black market this government license. Now, how do you create this? Suppose I want to drive a car and I want to get a license. You create a rule that only 10 licenses will be issued. Whatever may be the logic, you don't want much crowd on the roads. So, you may have a policy that first come, first serve, or whatever it is, only 10 licenses. But subsequently, a license holder may wish to sell his car. Now, the buyer cannot drive a car without a license. So, you make it binding upon him that no, you go and buy license from this person. Right? This is one situation. The other situation is that car, suppose, comes with a driving license, not only RC but a driving license. So, you tell, okay, the car costs 5 lakhs. But I'll sell this car off at 50 lakhs. It will come with a driving license, and you have to buy that driving license from a person X, who is a political crony. Right? So, the man who is given that license with no ostensible person to work upon that license, absolutely no intention, he intends to black market it, and the other person who is, say, Michael Schumacher, the fittest person to drive the car. He is a Formula F1, racing expert. He could have just gone to the licensing authority, got a original driving license at, say, X rupee. And he decides to purchase the driving license from a rookie at 10 times the price. So, he is essentially bribing. So, it's a bribe from one side and a black marketing from the other side. Right? So, that was essentially the transaction. Now, once it came in the course of my official duty, not doing that act would have been, a crime of omission. There is a if you study law, there is a crime of omission. By omitting to do an act, it's a crime. It would have been a crime of omission. It was a positive duty to do. There's nothing whistleblowing. I was not doing whistleblowing. If I had not done this act, it would have been a crime of omission. Now, it became, yes, a very big media event. Most of my transfers after a certain stage, say 45, about 20-25 transfers were media stories. Because of certain acts which I had protested, they did highlight it, but it cannot go beyond a point. The executive, the people who are managing the show, they develop a thick skin. So at some stage they ignore it. But this picked up, this incident, because it got related to the, we call it the spirit of the times. Zeitgeist is a German term meaning that the spirit of the times. It was the spirit of the times where corruption had reached its zenith. And it tended to be embolized in that single individual related to the top ruling political family. So it got picked up. It was picked up by the media, and in a sense that I did come in the limelight, but the action is not done with the expectation that some action would come in the media highlight. It's never so. You do it because something comes up, and you do it as a natural part and course of your official duty. Something gets picked up, something doesn't get picked up. It happens.
So the political picture in Haryana and in the central has changed. Do you think the change of government has made the scenario better?
See, it's a politically loaded question. It's not proper for me to answer being a civil servant. We as civil servants are bound by the Constitution of India. So, whatever the Constitution says, we are bound by that, and the rules and the laws made thereunder. Sometimes one has to get over it also. Not all rules conform to the spirit of the Constitution of India, right? This particular bribery or black marketing did conform to the rules. Rules were created to enable these kind of transactions. So there is a two-way criticism here, that what rule or law was violated. Yes, there were several rules and laws were violated, but in the grant and renewal or transfer of the license, ostensibly the rules were obeyed on a superficial level. Right? If you go deep below the surface, you can understand the game. So the Constitution of India doesn't allow public servants or government officers or the political executive, even if they are elected, to loot, to indulge in public loot. So that's it, So one has to decide and take a call, a judgmental call. You may commit an error at a time. It could be a bona fide error, but no malice is intended.
So there were many land deal cases in Haryana.
Many?
Land deal cases in Haryana. But Dr. Ashok Khemka is highlighted with Mr. Robert Vadra's case. Is there any political motive behind it?
Well, if you go through the reply which I filed to the DLF Robert Vadra charge sheet, it highlights some of the land scams which I had unearthed. Also, subsequent to that posting, I also highlighted the scams in the agriculture sector. And I am happy that the present government is focusing on direct benefits transfer through this Jan Dhan scheme to the farmers of the benefits which are meant for the farmers. Otherwise, these benefits were being squandered away by the people who were administering these schemes and not reaching the last beneficiary. Now, regarding your question that why the other land scams were not adequately highlighted. They were highlighted in the local media. But these land matters, or for example, any other financial crime, is a complex issue. So, when the media does a story, it always try to see that how well it will be able to project it to the people, to the viewing public, and communicate that whether it would be of interest or not. So whether it occupies the pages in the national media or not, that's a different ball game. But yes, local media there was coverage, and most of the cases there were judgments of the Supreme Court and High Court, where the Honorable Supreme Court and the High Court have ordered the governments to register a criminal case, and they have annulled all those scams, most of the scams which had taken place. Recently, there was a judgment in which, in a city called Rohtak, the Honorable Supreme Court has completely undone the transactions and ordered the government to register a criminal case as well as take action against the officers involved. They are given a time limit of 1 year. Let us see. Already 4 months have passed. There has been no action initiated. So, it is very important that the action against the guilty, once he is caught, must be taken. The surety and certainty of action is more important than the quantum of punishment. One must understand this very well. If you are sure that with a 99% probability a crime will not go unpunished, the quantum of punishment may not be that severe, then I think the crime can be curtailed. But if people are not caught and the quantum of punishment can be very heavy, then it's not a good enough deterrence not to commit that crime.
So being such an honest officer in Indian political and administrative system is a very difficult task as you have observed yourself. So what differences and problems you faced in managing your personal life and administrative life?
Yeah, I'd like to correct out here. There is no such thing as one is so honest. A so honest people, if he is ineffective, is virtually useless. You must distinguish in your life. For example, you are honest and you are honest within your organization. It doesn't make a difference as such, right? But if you are effective, it does make a difference. Now, your effectiveness in your job and your personal honesty. Now, effectiveness is professional integrity. That's another dimension. That is, your effectiveness in the job is your professional integrity. And there is another dimension called a personal integrity. Now, these two, I would call them, orthogonal to each other. People try to confuse personal integrity with professional integrity. A person can be effectively honest and effectively dishonest, and ineffective honest and an ineffective dishonest. Now, people who tend to get their jobs done, they want effectiveness more than personal honesty. They may abuse, कि साला पैसे खा गया, but they will certainly not like an ineffective honest person. Now, it's not true that I was so honest. Again, something I would like to correct an impression. What people fear is the effective honesty. Now, effective honesty means I must be able to guess. I must be intelligent enough to guess your moves, like in a chess game. And then must have the courage to act. And must have the perseverance to act. I may have the courage to act, but then I may say, कौन इतनी जिल्लत लेगा? Who will take all the trouble? So perseverance, sincerity, and courage to act. And for all these to happen, you must have the ability to act. That is, intelligent enough to guess your move. चोर सिपाही का गेम होता है. सिपाही सिर्फ अगर डंडे की बात करता है तो he cannot win over a big चोर. He must be intelligent, he must have courage, he must have sincerity and perseverance. So regarding that, I'm only paraphrasing that not so honest, but what is feared is probably the effective honesty. Regarding the personal and the balancing out the personal life, yes, it was difficult. But I would give credit to my family that they kept my family life completely separate from my professional life. When I joined the service, I don't think that my wife and children would have used the resources at the command of a government officer. So their needs were kept to a minimum. So those days of frequent, those days when I was frequently transferred or put to an, very obscure or a difficult posting, it didn't affect my family. If you are going to raise your comfort level, then come back to this level. For example, it's very difficult for me now to live the life of a student because my comfort levels have increased. So to come back to the student life is difficult, but for you it's a daily routine. Now if you are going to maintain this routine ahead in life, no matter how good you earn, so you are not going to be ruffled by those difficult days. But if you are going to increase your needs and wants, then one transfer is going to ruffle you. The chief minister or anybody else can, virtually put you at ransom that I am going to take away your job. So you will immediately touch the knees because in the back of your mind the calculation will go on. If I lose this job, this particular job, I am going to put to these troubles. So I am fortunate in a way that the family has been very less demanding. So my idiosyncrasies have really not, have had no effect from the point of view of demands from the family.
So, apart from your work as a bureaucrat, the headline said, Senior IAS Officer topped Punjab University Law Entrance Test. So, why did you do it so late?
No, it's not a question of doing late. Actually, you see, I am to retire after 9 years. That's the normal age of retirement. The present job is not taxing. It's at most a couple of hour job in a day. So खाली बैठ कर भी वो आपका दिमाग तंग होता है. So in public life, public law becomes a part of your life and you get to know parts of it through experience. So once you do a structured study, you undertake a work which you have been going through the past 25 years, you do a structured study of it. And plus there is always an added advantage that after retirement you can, get a gainful employment. So otherwise, at 60 years you don't really age. So what is the recent trend is that this post-retirement sinecures, which weakens the person the nearer he comes to his retirement, because he perceives and sees a vacuum in his life. So he wants a 5-year job, a post-retirement job. Now at 65 also he is not satisfied. He wants some commissions or some other jobs to be adjusted, or somebody who are too careeristic want to be adjusted as governors or whatever it is. So it would be unfortunate if at 60 years I am going to go with a begging bowl to anybody. So you have the capacity, So you can undertake a course of study. Now it's a bit difficult because I have to take classes from 5:30 to 9:15. So initially it was difficult to adjust, but now I have got in my groove. So you complete the law course, so you'll be eligible to practice as a lawyer, and probably at 60 years, when you do not need money, you can contribute to society in that profession without the need of getting corrupt, or without expectations of others that you need to do this because I have done this for you. That's killing for me. So there is no expectations, and when there are no expectations, you do perform at your best. So I don't know what will happen now, but now of course I have come across, and I thought, with the consent of my family, that this profession is going to be good for you, in a sense that maybe even 2-3 cases a month is going to keep me occupied and will do something good for the society. I have seen government from inside. So public law is not going to, it's going to do only good to the society if I start practicing in public law.
So, would you like to fight against the corruption by stepping into the political system, as some bureaucrats have already done? Do you have any political aspirations for future?
No, not at present. See, this there was a lot of pressure upon me in the year 2014. I won't like to say, but I think almost many parties other than the one party were more than welcome that I could join them. And I could have contested also, or otherwise. But as I told you, it draws in a lot of expectations. And when expectations are drawn in and you don't have a source of income, that becomes a source of corruption. See, tell me one thing. A full-time politician, वो अगर प्रोफेशन में पैसे खर्च करने ही है, but he needs money to support himself and his family also. How does he get it? Right? So you must have some other source of earning which supports you and your family. Then you can give in to this profession if it's to your aptitude 100% without being corrupt. Right? So the question of, what happens that anybody is seen behaving courageously, there is an expectation that he would join politics. That shouldn't necessarily be so. For example, would you ask this question to Sakshi Malik that should she join politics? No, because she has done well in wrestling and you expect that she should get laurels for this country in wrestling. So we all have a job to perform. All jobs are equally important. No job is less important than the other. So if there is a time where one feels that, okay, you don't need money at all, then one can think. But as long as one needs a regular source of income to support yourself and your family, then politics cannot be a vocation.
So, where do you think the Indian bureaucratic system is lacking in tackling against corruption in cases like Vyapam?
See, I do not know the facts of the Vyapam very accurately, but as learnt from the media, the Vyapam is a recruitment scam in Madhya Pradesh. The bureaucracy, as you understand, is not responsible for making recruitments or making recommendations to the recruitments. It is done by an independent agency, which is usually a constitutional body for class 1 and 2 jobs, and otherwise an executive or a statutory body in case of class 3 and class 4 jobs. So the corruption happens at that stage. Right? If at all there is corruption in recruitments, which I must admit there is. Right? So if you want to say that the state executive or the central executive would follow up and check these recruitments, it is certainly not their mandate. What happens that a recommendation comes in, we are mandated only to check the qualifications. For example, we were recommended by the UPSC. The Department of Personnel and Training is not mandated to check whether the recommendations of UPSC were fair or unfair. The only thing they would do is to check whether I fulfill the eligibility conditions laid down or not. What were the eligibility conditions? That I was a graduate. That is the only thing they are required to check. Now, in case of a criminal complaint that there was some, hanky-panky in the recommendations or recruitments, then a criminal case is registered and the investigation takes its own pace and the list gets cancelled or whatever it is. But as you understand, it is not the executive which does these recruitments. So recruitments are done by another agency and the interaction happens at that plane. So your question should be that is the investigating agency competent enough to handle these recruitment scams or not? The answer is definitely yes, provided they are willing. So the constraints come from all sides to doing a fair and proper investigation. But yes, the Indian Police and the Central Bureau of Investigation are absolutely competent to undertake this kind of investigation, whether there was any ghotala in recruitments or not. So they are competent. They have the ability. Now, whether the other ingredients, as I told you, that whether they have the courage to act, whether they have the perseverance to act, whether they have the will to act, those are different dimensions. It depends on individual officers, how they react to, the pulls and pressures of the system.
So we would like to know, sir, how you celebrate your quality time with your family.
How I celebrate my quality time, it's not an easy question to answer well. Most of the time my wife paints, writes poetry, so you read her thoughts. Sometimes when we have free time, then she explains her works to me. With the children, now they are grown-ups. They are of the same age. The younger one is of the same age as you. The older one is a final year student. So they are no longer with us. They stay in hostels. So we communicate across phones. So the best time you celebrate with your children when they are below 16, 17 years of age. After that, they fly out of the nests and they become independent beings. Then it is only a question of phone calls, an advisor, a counsel. You become a friend to them. So in their moments of ups and downs, to be their counselor. In my moments of ups and downs, they are my counselor. So we are more like friends. So that's how you spend time. But each one of us is independent in his thoughts. We don't try to influence each other beyond a point.
So in the end, we have got to know that you are a big follower of Rabindranath Tagore's poetry. Would you please share some lines of it with us?
The only line which I reiterate again and again है यदि तोर डाक सुने क्यों ना आशे तब एकला चलो रे. That is, it gives you great strength, inner strength, that at times when you feel lonely, then walk the lone path. That is, have the courage of your convictions.
Thank you, sir. It was pleasure interviewing
Thank
you.
you very
Thank
much.
you so much.
Very much, sir.
What a wonderful interview.
Thank you.